races down and 8 remain in the 1996 Formula One World Driving Championship. Welcome to the start of the second half of the season, the Grand Prix of France from the circuit Manicourt. I'm Bob Varsha along with Derek Bell. There you see final preparations on the grid. We come back to continental Europe for the remainder of the summer before we wrap things up in Japan. It's been a busy weekend. We've had weather that alternates between hot, dry, sunny conditions and dripping rain. As you can see, it's a fine day in France right now. Temperature about 70 degrees. As you watch Jean-Marie Balest in the Blazer, former president of the FIA, joking with Ron Dennis from the McLaren team. Derek, let's talk a little bit about the news of the day. Let's call it on-track buzz.
Well, Renault has shocked the Formula One world this week by announcing the withdrawal from Formula One at the end of 1997 after 18 years of involvement, having provided the most successful engine of recent years. Elf, the national French fuel company, also announced the withdrawal at the end of this season, following 29 years from Formula One. However, they will continue the support for the Elf Young Drivers scheme. Gilles de Ferran is being linked to Jackie Stewart Racing, but Gilles denies any contracts at this time. Of course. Now, Honda could well be back in 1998, if rumors are to be believed. Also, there are whispers of BMW re-entering. Arrows has been testing Bridgestone tyres with a view to racing with them in 1997. But surprise, surprise, Goodyear do not permit them to take them home after the races. Can't blame them for that.
Not a bit. Now let's get back to that top story. Renault withdrawing from Formula One. James Allen spoke with the technical director, Bernard Dudot.
Bernard, is it fair to say that you've done so much winning that in fact you've put yourself out of a job?
Yes, you know that the aim from Renault was to win some season, and at this stage we are at the level of the aim, and now it's not necessary to continue in this way. It's better to stop when we are still winning.
Is IndyCar racing of any interest to you personally and to Renault in particular?
It's, yes, for me, personally, I am very interested by this Formula One. For the Renault, I don't know now, because you know that Renault presently is not involved in American market, but it could be in the future, and in this condition, it could be a solution, but later.
All right, thank you, James. This is all very interesting in that since its return to Formula One 6-7 seasons ago, Renault has worked exclusively with Elf for fuels and lubricants. With Elf leaving at the end of this year, Renault at the end of next year, that means Renault's farewell season in Formula One will be with an entirely new fuel partner, and that should be interesting. There you see the success of those two partners. A variety of teams will also have to find new fuel and lubricant sponsors next year, including Williams and Benetton, of course. Now let's get to the driver's silly season. Once again, here's James with Tom Walkinshaw.
A lot of talk at the moment about Gilles de Ferran coming into Formula One next year. Most people associating him with Stewart, but I know he's a driver close to your own heart.
Yeah, I had Gilles signed up for this season, but he couldn't get the release from Jim Hall. I'm sure that if he decides he can get out of his Hall contract and he wants to come to Europe, then he'll give us a ring, so we'll see.
Well, we're about to begin the second half of the year. Call that the unofficial start of the silly season. As Derek mentioned, Gilles de Ferran being very non-committal about his future with Jim Hall Racing in IndyCar. Plenty more to talk about. We'll be back with more from France in just a moment. Stand by. The Formula One Grand Prix of France is brought to you by Eagle. 9 of the Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of France, now just minutes away with a huge crowd on hand here in southern France. The circuit located pretty much in the middle of nowhere, but the fans do find their way here. There is two-time defending champ Michael Schumacher. We'll have more on him in a moment. First, here's James Allen with this week's edition of Off Track Buzz, featuring a man now in his 4th season at 24 years of age.
Grand Prix drivers certainly work hard for the money. There are 16 Grand Prix a year all over the world. Rubens Barrichello, tell us about a typical day in your life.
Well, I like to sleep quite a lot, so I don't know if it's being a Brazilian I like to sleep. I need 9 hours of sleeping, but on Friday I get here at 9 o'clock. I have a small breakfast with muesli and yogurt, some types of fruit. And I quite enjoy this part because it's the beginning of the day. As soon as I finish the breakfast, I go for my first briefing of the day with the engineers, and then we decide what we're gonna do during the day. Basically, we have to know if we're gonna use just one set of tires, if we're gonna change the car quite quick, or if we have to adapt the car to the track, this type of things. And then we go to practice. We try to use all the laps, the 30 laps that we have, because it's quite important, especially because it's different type of tracks. After that, you have a debrief to check it out, everything you have on the list, even seat belts, if the car was alright, if the pedal was alright, and how did the practice go. I think a driver must know what's going on. It's just not saying that the car is understeering mid-corner to the exit. I think you have to know what to do to help the engineer, and for the engineer when he says for you to know already. So I quite enjoy looking inside the engine. I quite enjoy knowing things that maybe I didn't get on the past. So it's quite good to learning all the time. And then it starts the talking back again, where you have the interviews and you have photo shoots and things like this. I enjoy quite much being in Formula 1. It's I do a lot more than I used to do in Formula 3 or Formula 3000, but it's this world that I would like to wish for God, but I quite like being here.
As well he might. Incidentally, that young lady in black you saw with Rubens Barrichello is his sister Renata, visiting the racetrack, and her brother, a veteran of the sport at age 24. Now let's talk about the racetrack a bit, Derek.
Yes, well, of course, this track, in fact, is 2.6 miles. It's very, very smooth indeed. The drivers like it very much indeed. It's a 72-lap race, of course, but very, very smooth. There's a couple of hairpins thrown in to slow the cars right down, but in fact, Grand Curve is very, very important, sweeping through there to Estoril, down to Adelaide, then, of course, down, round the long left-hander up to Imola, which is an undulating up and down slope, very, very interesting little corner, gets the cars moving well there, Chateau d'Eau, and then, of course, straight down to chicane, which has caught a lot of people out this weekend. Now, just for interest's sake, here's some of the gear ratios the guys are using. You see, 5th gear past the pits, 4th gear around the Grand Curve, which leads them out on the 6-speed straight, leading down to Adelaide. From Adelaide, they scream up, down, up through the circuit, up towards a long left-hand hairpin. It's really 2nd, 3rd gear. They are 2nd gear, 44 miles an hour here, quite tight on the exit. 3rd gear up to 4th gear, 114, flick it up through the Imola curve, 2nd gear at Chateau d'Eau, and then 150 miles an hour up towards the chicane, and of course the entrance to the pits on the left, and a very tight hairpin, 2nd gear onto the pit straight.
It is a very busy racetrack, very fast, but very slippery. And as Derek mentioned, we've had a lot of cars off the track. That's also been a busy weekend with lots for everyone to see and do. Earlier in the weekend, Ferrari sent a press corps out to watch their man in action, Michael Schumacher, in karts. Of course, Schumacher cut his racing teeth in karts on a track owned by his father. On this occasion, however, the press was allowed to race with the 2-time world champ, if you want to call it that. Schumacher started at the back of the pack, of course, passed everybody within the space of a few laps. Here he is taking the lead. We might point out our James Allen was in the thick of it and was thoroughly trounced by the 2-time defending world titleist. Schumacher came through to victory. Next year they'll have to find another flagman, and everyone had a great time. Now it's time to check the starting grid for today's Formula One Grand Prix of France. And on the pole, who else but Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, a full 1 second under the lap record set back in 1992 by Nigel Mansell in a Williams. Next to him, runaway leader in the World Championship, Damon Hill in the Williams Renault. On row 2 will be Jean Alesi in the Benetton Renault and his teammate Gerhard Berger. On row 3, Mika Hakkinen in the improving McLaren Mercedes alongside Jacques Villeneuve, who had an enormous crash in qualifying. We hope you were with us for that. On row 4 will be David Coulthard in the 2nd McLaren alongside the Jordan of Martin Brundle, who had silenced his critics this weekend by out-qualifying his teammate for the first time this year. Row 5 will be Olivier Panis in the Ligier on their home track alongside Rubens Barrichello. First time the young Brazilian has qualified outside the top 10. Notice he is in the 10th spot, but listen closely. On row 6 will be Pedro Diniz in the Ligier and the Sauber Ford of Heinz-Harald Frentzen of Germany. Row 7, Mika Salo in the Tyrrell alongside his teammate Ukio Katayama from Japan. On row 8 will be Jos Verstappen in the footwork and the Sauber Ford of Johnny Herbert, who struggled in the morning warm-up. Row 9 will be Giancarlo Fisichella, or Fisico as he's known to his team, in the Minardi. Next to him, Portuguese Pedro Lamy, his teammate. On row 10, Ricardo Rosset in the Footwork Hart, and Luca Badois in the first of the 240 cars in the field. And on row 11, Andrea Montermini in the second 40, and Eddie Irvine in the Ferrari. Irvine had qualified in the 10 spot, but he was found to have barge boards or turning vanes on the right side of his car that were higher than legal, and as a result, his qualifying times were thrown out. He will start dead last in the field of 22. That's our starting grid. We'll take one quick break and be back for the formation lap and the start of the Grand Prix of France. Stay with us.
But Grand Prix Tours.
Consider Michael Schumacher, whose Ferrari has exploded on the formation lap.
Just unbelievable. Just clouds of smoke out the back, oil all over Alesi's visor, and that is it. Can he get back and get in the training car, in the spare car? I don't think he can get back in time, can he? Because they're going to go straight away. Here we go. Just lets loose. But of course, let's just remember that these guys go flat out on their warming up lap. And of course, he's in front, so he can really give it some.
As you pointed out, Derek, there was oil all over Jean Alesi's visor and onboard camera. More importantly, there is also oil all over the racing line on the high-speed infield section of this Manicourt track. There is Michael Schumacher walking back. How is this possible?
Not at all good, because we really needed him in there to stir the Williams up a bit. However, we do have Alesi there, and I think Alesi, he's been at the front all weekend in whatever practice session it's been, warming up, qualifying, whatever practice session. He's been right there, and it's his home circuit. Fans are with him, and I think we're going to see a great race from him.
Ferrari has had such a roller coaster year, mostly because of the brilliance of Schumacher as a driver. But once again, mechanical gremlins have felled them. And there is the number 2 Ferrari of Eddie Irvine, who will start at the back of the grid after a mechanical violation in qualifying. There is Frenchman Jean Todt, who runs the team. He must be absolutely disheartened. Nevertheless, the race will go on without him. Damon Hill and Jean Alesi. Hill chops across to the racing line as they head into the Grand Curb for the first time. Up through the gearbox, onto the back straightaway, through the slight right-hander known as the Golf Turn, up to 185 miles an hour before they brake hard for the Adelaide hairpin.
Yeah, Hakkinen all over the back of Alesi. Hill, amazing, he just gets away every time. I mean, he streaks away at the start. He has some wonderful starts, but he's also had some lousy ones. But he's had a majority of better starts. Villeneuve right up there, obviously Hakkinen all over the back of him.
There's Ricardo Rosset now bringing up the rear, so Eddie Irvine is making time in the Ferrari from the back of the pack. But Damon Hill rocketing away, which suggests that he is somewhat light on fuel, and maybe the same strategy he employed at the Grand Prix of San Marino at Imola, Italy earlier this year. Light fuel load, take off, 2-stop race minimum.
It's pretty, I think at this track we've heard all the problems they're having with tires. The track is very hard on tires, and I think, you know, it'd be really very, very important for them to have 2 stops, light fuel, they don't wear the tires out too much, plus they can get the extra set of fresh tires, and I think it's the more logical way to go.
Of course, the Williams with a great downforce to drag ratio, they can put a little bit more wing on the back, load up on the downforce without losing their top speed, and the lap times just keep falling.
That is a dynamic start from Damon. Look at it, he really has just blasted away. Alesi's trying to stay with him, but he's catching up quite a bit under braking there for the hairpin. Very, very hard on brakes this circuit. Very, very hard indeed.
Bit of new paving in that Adelaide hairpin, and in the Lycée corner, which is the chicane just before the start-finish straight. This is the tight infield hairpin, second gear corner, as you look at the running order. Damon Hill, who won 5 of the first 8 races of the year, should have won 6, but his engine let go while he was leading by miles at Monaco. And right now, he is the dominant leader of the World Driving Championship, a title he has never won. And this is a race that he has never won. The race has been held here at Manicourt since 1991. As you watch Jean Alesi in the Benetton Renault, 3 times Damon Hill has sat on pole, but he has never won the race.
This week he wasn't on pole. He reckons he might win the race. Not if Alesi has anything to do with it. Alesi is going to, I think, going to see the greatest drive we've seen from him this year. He's under a lot of pressure at Benetton, as you know, and I think he really needs to get a good result in front of his home crowd. It was great to see him actually bowing yesterday on top of a wall after his car stopped when he ran out of fuel, and waving to the crowd and blowing kisses to them. Great bit of character, which we don't often see out of Alesi.
Andrea Montermini in the 40 Ford. It appears his race has already been run. Tough break for that young, modestly budgeted team. And for Montermini, he only had an 8-race contract. Obviously, that contract is now expired. But Guido Corti, who runs the team, has decided to keep the Italian with him. There's something splattering on Jean Alesi's onboard camera. Hard to tell if it's rain. We have had rain during the course of the weekend. It is not expected today, but there is a good cloud cover overhead, and we might well see raindrops.
It was interesting, a couple of laps ago, when Damon was shifting gear, there was a puff of smoke out of the back of his car. I didn't put much to it, but no, I don't think it is that. This is definitely rain.
Yeah, he's too far back to be getting it off the car ahead. Here's the chicane, the Lycée corner.
Villeneuve over the back of Hakkinen. It's good to see the McLaren up there again. Hakkinen has been there very close all weekend. They've had some very good testing work back in England, and the car is really coming together now. It's been said that they had a new engine this week, but it appears that it isn't a new engine. It's just the same old engine, and they're making the chassis work a little better.
Ron Dennis has been very coy about the future of his drivers. He confirms that David Coulthard will be back with McLaren next year. He is not so sanguine, however, about Mika Hakkinen, whose contract will be up. Dennis says they have not begun discussions about 1997 yet. He also mentioned that they are assessing Jan Magnussen, their young Danish test driver, who did wonderful things in his one and only race for the team, standing in for Coulthard last year at the Grand Prix of the Pacific at Aida, Japan. Ron Dennis says Magnussen's time may have come. We're going to want to get him into a car. We're not sure which car it might be, and they also want some new test drivers for the McLaren team. So there could be a lot of off-track buzz in the coming weeks regarding them. As the race unfolds, we'll take a timeout. There is your running order. We'll be back with more live from France. We are back in France, and lots is going on as you ride along with Jacques Villeneuve, who has been passed, it would appear, by Martin Brundle. Excuse me, I think this is one of the Ligers looking ahead to Rubens Barrichello.
All right.
The blue nose kind of threw me off. Meanwhile, there is definitely something spewing out the back of Damon Hill's race-leading Williams Renault, and Eddie Irvine right there in the second Ferrari has problems.
It's all going wrong this week, that is for certain, for poor old Ferrari. Maybe we'll find out what's wrong. There didn't seem to be any smoke coming out the back, but something maybe electro. No, he's not got in the pits yet.
The word from the Ferrari pits is that Michael Schumacher reports he had no indication of a problem whatsoever before his Ferrari V10 exploded on the formation lap for this race. Schumacher on pole, he is out, and there is the Irishman, Eddie Irvine, out as well. What a weekend for Ferrari. Meanwhile, watch the back of Damon Hill's Williams. No sign of it there, but we've seen the moisture collecting on Jean Alesi's in-car camera in second place. And there was definitely a puff of something from the back of the race-leading Williams moments ago during our commercial break.
Yeah, just like the one I saw early in the race. Just every now and again there's a puff of something, but the moisture on Alesi's camera and his visor presumably is quite substantial, but nobody's talked about there being any damp there. It's difficult to see from our booth just what is happening outside.
Pictures coming to you from French television. No obvious sign of a problem there for Hill.
Well, there's no moisture on his camera lens at all.
So that would discount the weather.
The interesting thing is going to be in this race is the tyre situation, because the Williams just doesn't seem to go through tyres like anybody else. It seems such a beautifully balanced car. Schumacher was very concerned, if he had been running, that his tyres wouldn't last. because they have to put so much into the chassis to make it work, whereas the Hill Williams combination is just so perfect that they don't seem to have any problems with tyre wear. But Alesi's not dropping back that far. He's still in attention there, and Häkkinen isn't dropping back, nor is Villeneuve. But I would like to have seen a bit more action, but this is what happens with these races in this day and age. They know they've got one, maybe two pit stops, so they can afford to cool it for a while, see how the tyre wear pans out, because they don't get the chance to do a long test during practice or qualifying, because they're very limited on the laps they do. So nobody's actually been around here and done 25 laps or even 30 laps on a set of tyres continually. You can do them 3 laps here, 2 laps there, but it's not the same as continual hard graft and actually pushing those tyres to the limit.
B compound Goodyears on all the cars. That's the relatively hard compound. We anticipate 2 stops for race leader Damon Hill. If that's the case, we expect him to pit around lap 22 as you ride with John Alesi. Word from the Ferrari garage, the gearbox felled Eddie Irvine.
See, his camera had moisture on it then, but he's too far back from Damon. I'd have thought to have picked up the sort of moisture he is. You'd think it'd be a fine film he would be picking up at this distance behind Damon. Bill Alesi's wishing it was Damon's engine problem. This is certainly the strongest we've seen the Benetton driving in a dry situation this season. It's great to see it going so well, and Berger isn't that far back either. This is the chicane before the pits where a lot of people have been going off nearly. Oh, Alesi had it really crossed up coming in there. They're getting a lot of trouble with the actual back end of the car breaking away. They're having a major problem with the brakes. Everybody seems to be locking up brakes. We'll talk about brake wear in a moment. I'd like to talk about that, Bob, because it's quite interesting, the brake wear they get here.
You're watching Mika Häkkinen running in 3rd place, and as you can see, 8.3 seconds behind leader Damon Hill after just 8 laps. So Hill pulling away at a second a lap. Braking hard for the Adelaide hairpin. McLaren Mercedes continues to develop. Notice there is no tobacco advertising on that car. No Marlboro there, no Rothmans on the Williams, no Benson & Hedges on the Jordans, no alcohol sponsors either. They are not allowed to advertise here in France. We will not see tobacco in Britain or in Germany, so the teams will go the month of July without being able to advertise their sponsors. Of course, subtlety is everything, and there is no doubt of the logos on those cars, whether the words are there or not. You ride with Jacques Villeneuve, who had a huge crash in qualifying. That's a brand new monocoque that was built up by the team overnight. Hill, Alesi, Häkkinen, Villeneuve, Berger, and Brundle. Let's get back to France. Jos Verstappen, the young Dutchman's race in the footwork car has now ended, and here's how it happened.
Ooh, yeah, he just lost it coming out of that left-hander, got out on the dirt, and of course there's no way he could stop because he was on the grass and dirt, and now, of course, in the pebbles.
Asking a $5 million contract for next year is Verstappen. That kind of thing won't get it for him. He started 15th, was running 11th when disaster struck.
Yes, they're not exactly doing very well at the moment, these teams, but he really shot across that bit of shingle there. Didn't do the car any good whatsoever at all. Not having a good weekend.
He becomes the 5th car out of the race of the field of 22 that started it. There is Damon Hill, who is now set fast lap, 1:19.059. That beats Michael Schumacher's fast lap in this race from a year ago.
Yes, he's pulling away about half a second a lap over Alesi. One would expect he possibly could pull away more than that if he really had to. As long as you can just pull away a bit, that's all you need. You don't need to overstress the car. But it's still, as you say, a very, very quick lap. You see the wear on the inside of the front, those front tires, where the wheels are cambered over. Substantial amount of wear, sort of working done on the inside of those tires.
Watch for the shady lines in the tires that indicate where the rubber is building up. We'll see the running order. Barrichello moving up just that little bit. Panis, surprisingly, not very quick. Neither of the Ligers, who looked very strong in Friday practice. In fact, at one point, Olivier Panis was the quickest car on the racetrack. But in race trim, it just hasn't come together for them. There are the cars out of the race. Michael Schumacher, what a year the 2-time defending world champion is having. In the last 16 Grand Prix, he has had 8 retirements, including 5 in his last 9 races. When he has finished, however, he has never been out of the top 3, and he has had 5 victories in that span. But today, if all goes well for Damon Hill, Michael Schumacher is in grave danger of becoming somewhat redundant in this run for the World Championship.
Yes, Michael reckons it's all over already, and I'm sure as he slowed down on that warming up lap, he thought it was all over for the season. Damon is not so sure, however, but motor racing can be very cruel, but I must admit, you have to admit the dominance of the Rothmans William Rothmans happens to be absolutely consummate at the moment. A lot of tire blocking up there on the front there from Martin Brundle. Well, I see, actually, it may well have been, can't see who it is. It's Brundle.
Brundle has been under huge pressure in the British tabloids. Of course, that's how they make their money in British publishing. But he has really lashed out this weekend, saying he is not concerned whatsoever about his drive. He knows he has not gotten the results, but he says there are reasons for that. Then he came back and out-qualified Rubens Barrichello for this race. Of course, this is the track Martin Brundle knows well, having driven for Ligier. There you see the gap. Lazy closing up just a little bit on Hill. The Williams garage reports no problems for Hill, despite evidence of something spewing out the back of the car.
He did look, he's right up on the curb. I'm surprised he's getting up on that curb so much, because it really does flick you across the track towards that exit curb, which has a severe bump on the end, as we saw several drivers hitting it during qualifying yesterday. Lots of beautiful sweeping curves, which of course does suit this Williams exceptionally well. They only have about 25 millimeters of suspension movement on these cars, which is absolutely nothing. And on a circuit like this, that is, it's like driving a go-kart.
Here's heavy braking for the Adelaide hairpin.
Very, very heavy indeed. And in fact, they can press a button to flick it straight down from 6th gear down to 2nd gear, so they're in the right gear without actually having to go through the intermediate gears than some of the buttons on Hill's steering wheel. In practice and qualifying, you were seeing a lot of brakes locking up, but the drivers are driving just that little bit off the maximum they were in qualifying. And of course, we know that they do play around with the car quite a bit to get the ultimate out of it in qualifying. So of course, they're not pushing it quite as hard in these areas today. However, they are still driving at 10/10, let it be said.
All of the British teams coming in off a big test at Silverstone in the run-up to what for the British teams is their biggest race of the year, the British Grand Prix, 2 weeks from today. And there's another big test coming up next week. Damon Hill had an interesting visitor last week. Pete Sampras, who's now doing so well at Wimbledon, visited the team. It was a good look at what a Goodyear looks like when it's being tortured by Martin Brundle.
Yeah, Coulthard is actually making great headways into Brundle right now, right over the back of him. Talking about Silverstone for a moment, in fact, they have changed the circuit since last year, and I'd raced on it just a few weeks ago in the sports car race there. But the Stowe corner, which was nasty, rather like this corner there, they've opened it up substantially and made it a much faster, much easier corner to get around. However, you go much faster into it, which means it's more difficult to overtake. Back to square one, but it is easier to drive on.
Silverstone has taken a lot of changing over the last few years as they try to please the spectators and the drivers and meet the more stringent safety requirements in Formula One these days. Coulthard closing up definitely on Martin Brundle.
Yes, you saw Martin locking up some brakes just now, and he's having a bit of a tough time with it all. Coulthard obviously isn't. And once you start to lock up brakes, you get flat spot the tires, puts a little bit of imbalance into the car if you do it too many times, and you get this vibration to the steering, or perhaps through the seat of your pants, which you don't like at all. It just detracts from your driving just that split second or two.
The 40 team goes to work on Luca Badois. His teammate Andre Montermini is out of the race. Back on board now with David Coulthard as he tries to pry 6th place away from Martin Brundle.
Interesting to watch the way Coulthard catches him up under braking going into the corner, but you just watch the engine on that Peugeot pull away as they hit the straight. It has tremendous power, and it makes you wonder if Eddie could really get Eddie Jordan could really get his engine to work, or the chassis, should I say, to work as well as the engine. It would be wonderful to see.
No question about it. Once again, Rubens Barrichello and Martin Brundle have been 1-2 or 2-1 in terms of top speed in virtually every session. That Peugeot is really pumping out the ponies.
Yes, with Renault going at the end of next season, I think Peugeot will probably put that much more effort into it, because in French terms, in European terms, Peugeot certainly are strong competitors of Renault, and it would be great to see Peugeot actually getting out there and proving how good their engines are by getting to a really top team.
Word from the pits is a wheel bearing failure threw Jos Verstappen off the racetrack. As you watch Pedro Diniz, who now is holding up traffic behind him. That's Rubens Barrichello, who's going to want to get around him very soon because he has someone just behind him, and that is Olivier Panis. Pedro Diniz up in 8th place. How did that happen?
I like that camera on that wing. I think it's a really lovely position. You really see the back of the car in front on a shot like that. Just see what the driver's doing, where he's placing the car in the corner.
You can tell from those British flags in the grandstand, it is not only the French who make up the crowd of some 80,000 people here today.
Just shows they cannot get by him, can they? It's just so twisted, the circuit. There's no room. But they should be able to have a go here after they get around the hairpin onto the straightaway. Barrichello up on the curb, sweeps across the right-hand side to get the line right to go into this fast left-hander.
Ligiers, of course, powered by the Mugen Honda engines. Honda management have admitted publicly they plan to get back into Formula One. And the question is who will get those engines, which is becoming supremely important now that Renault has announced one more season and they are moving on to something else.
Interesting way to see the way Diniz actually pulled away through the ground curve there. Obviously, there's a lot of turbulence behind a car. You don't want to get too close, and that's exactly what Barrichello was doing coming to the grand curve. It's the left and the right, long right, leading on to the main, or to the far straight down the back, the Gulf Straight. And obviously, if he gets too close, he gets all this turbulence in the fast corner, which upsets the car, and there's no way that you can ride as close as you'd like to.
That deep, throaty engine tone from the Mugen Honda V10. Very distinctive engine note. This, of course, is Ligiers' home track. They test here. They opened a new museum this weekend featuring 16 historic Ligiers. Of course, the one Olivier Panis is driving will be historic after winning Monaco. First victory in 15 seasons for the Ligier team. Good look there at the distinctly sculpted rear diffuser underneath the Jordan.
You just look at if they go offline turning into that grand curve, it looks very, very rubbery and very, very dirty on the outside indeed.
Looks like those folks were watching a tennis match. Yeah. Left and right and left and right. We'll take a quick time out and return for more action as they head for the Adelaide hairpin. Once again, Martin Brundle coming under fire. Series point standings, and they'll be on the track at Winchester on Thunder Wednesday night. Bob Barcia, along with Derek Bell, watching the battle for 6th place. The gold Jordan of Martin Brundle has it. The red and white McLaren of David Coulthard wants it.
Yeah, David can't do much about Martin, though. Martin's still locking up brakes a lot, though, which, of course, as I say, is putting a lot of wear on those tyres. The front tyres are the ones that are doing the locking up, and eventually they'll give in, and, of course, he's going to have more of a problem with understeer, or push, as they say, and that should give David just that advantage. He's having to look down the inside, but no.
David Coulthard has been keeping his mechanics busy this weekend. He had 2 big offs on Friday and Saturday, and then today in the morning warm-up, he took it into the gravel trap again.
There's so many of them getting in the gravel trap, but if you look at it, the circuit is all it's got is gravel traps. As Brundle locks another wheel up going into the left-hander. But it is very, very hard. I think here is just dirt everywhere. If you get on the grass, 1 foot on the grass, and you're either in a wall or you're in a gravel trap. And I'm sure Villeneuve can vouch for that. He got out yesterday in qualifying just a tad wide. The car moved a bit on him. Looked like he had it under control. Trying to keep the car straight. Gets on the grass and straight out into that gravel trap. And then, of course, bouncing down the curbs and then over a bank and then straight in the tire wall. Destroyed the car. Mechanics, as we said, worked on the car all night to get it ready for today. There's Coulthard right over the back of Brundle, but you can see the power of that Peugeot engine pulls away from the Mercedes, which I'm sure must be a bit galling for Coulthard. And of course he can't get close enough. Catches him up here, but can do nothing about it whatsoever.
Rubens Barrichello from 9th place heads for the pits.
Yeah, I think they had to get Rubens out of that battle in there because he was getting all tied up with Diniz, and he needed to get him away. This is a good way to make the break. Get him in early and get him out in a clear bit of road.
Sticker tires on Barrichello's car as the field continues by. There goes Olivier Panis chasing his teammate, Pedro Diniz. For what it's worth, here's the rundown in the warm-up. Jacques Villeneuve quickest in that rebuilt Williams. Jean Alesi second. Hakkinen third. Coulthard fourth. Michael Schumacher 5th. He's now out of the race. Gerhard Berger 6th. Damon Hill 7th. But he didn't get a lot of laps in after clipping Heinz-Harald Frentzen and taking the front wheel off the Sauber. Damon said it was his fault. Here's Jean Alesi in.
They're stopping quite early. It's only on about 20 laps. But I guess they're going to do just a lot of checking out, see just what tyre wear there's been, and also sort of the fuel consumption, and they can get out and calibrate the latter part of the race somewhat easier.
All that camber in those fronts.
Of course, there's more rubber getting on the track now, which will give them more grip as the race progresses. Therefore, they're going to get less slippage, more grip, and so therefore, the latter part of the race, they can run a longer stint on those new tyres, or on tyres generally.
5th gear, 6th gear, 6th gear again. I lost count.
You hear the engine hardly increases in revs as it goes down the straight. They get to sort of a terminal velocity, and that's it. You see Alesi's right hand, you can just see it flicking on the button there as he changes gear.
There is Jacques Villeneuve. He has had a desperately up and down weekend thus far, including that big qualifying crash.
He's working hard on the back of Mika Hakkinen. He's caught him up from what he was before, but he's really giving him a hard time right now.
Could get interesting. A very determined racer chasing a very difficult man to pass.
And of course they're going to have to stop any time at all for tyres, because everybody else seems to have done, and I'm sure they're all on tube stop strategies.
A good look in that corner of how the racing line is beginning to carve itself amidst the muck. You can't get off to the left in the Grand Curve. There's Pedro Lamy in the Minardi. His teammate is out.
Slows Jacques down quite a lot. He had to go offline to get inside him to give Hakkinen that breakaway that he needed, but he won't keep him there for long, because obviously the Williams has that extra bit in hand. But you know, I know that Jacques was quickest in warm-up this morning. Just meant that he was probably more determined than ever to get over what he did yesterday. But don't care what you say, getting in a fresh car, he hasn't had any chance to sort it out and set it up to exactly to the fine touches that he'd like to. So he probably hasn't done quite as well as he'd like. I wouldn't complain if I was in 3rd place, but I'd be a little bit nervous if my teammate was leading the race. It's not quite what he wants.
Let's take you back to qualifying yesterday and show you Jacques Villeneuve's view of that crash.
He's coming in. The car looks absolutely fine. I mean, not putting any opposite lock on, touching the curb. He just goes out straight over the curb. Once he gets on that, look at him, hits those tyres and destroys the car.
A tremendous impact. He climbed out of the car in good shape. Actually, the car wobbled into the middle of the racetrack. David Coulthard had a task on his hands just to avoid him. Listen to the rev limiter working on the Minardi with the Ford Cosworth V8 ED3 version.
Look at those tires. Actually, that was rubber buildup, I think. It wasn't rubber wearing away. It was rubber buildup on the inside of the tires, which, of course, there's a lot of cars out there, a lot of rubber, and they're leaving it on the road. It's being picked up by... That's an awful noise those Remelers has made.
We have an especially low pit lane speed limit for this race on 50 miles an hour as Martin Brundle makes his stop. Notice the distinctive double air intakes. Only on the Jordan.
Good stop. Very good. 8.5 seconds. That's very, very good indeed. Martin won't have lost much by that.
His teammate rounds the Lycée corner in the background. Back up through the gearbox, probably taking that corner in 3rd, we have now learned after watching Alesi come out.
It just seems like Jacques can't really get on it. He's really being held up, I would say, by Hakkinen right now, but he can't get by him. I think if he could get by, he would actually pull away quite considerably. It would be a good time to bring him in, provided they're going to do 2 stops.
I'm a little surprised they didn't bring Villeneuve in. But he may be on that one-stop strategy that cost him in Canada. Here's Gerhard Berger.
He's having quite a lonely race back there, but I'm sure he's quite happy to have a lonely race. He just needs a good finish. He's not had brilliant races this year, and he's getting a lot of controversy about him. Will he retire at the British Grand Prix, etc.?
Yeah, he says, if there's a fortune teller out there, I wish he'd tell me how I'm going to do this weekend. He has 7 points in the championship, tied for 9th with Barrichello. But he points out, quite rightly, that the car has let him down on every occasion, except in Canada 2 weeks ago, where he spun the car as a result of driver error.
They showed him a board back there saying 1st gear. As a driver, you've got so much on your mind when you're sitting there, they're cleaning glasses, they might be giving you a drink, and somebody has to remind you to take it out of neutral and put it into first gear. It's easy to forget, and because of electronically, there's nothing you can actually feel it's actually in first gear as you would with a manual gearbox. You just press the button and hope. So you've really got to look at your telemetry and see that you are actually in first gear to make sure you're in the right gear when you leave.
While Damon Hill, showing no ill effects of what we thought was a mechanical problem with the car, may have been just some fluid overfill spilling out, dirtying Jean Alesi's visor. The Frenchman has had more than his share of dirty visors today after that extraordinary engine implosion from Michael Schumacher's pole-winning Ferrari on the formation lap. Ricardo Rosset, young Brazilian, in his debut season of Formula One, being attended to by the TWR team. There was an official announcement this weekend that Tom Walkinshaw has now completed his takeover of that team. Jackie Oliver, the former owner of Arrows Grand Prix, will now become the sporting director, and the team will complete its move from the old team base to Leafield. David Coulthard parks the McLaren in the pits. Out he goes. Good quick stop from McLaren.
Superb stop. That's what they need. You've got to get the whole thing together, and today they are working very, very well. You notice a lot of oil on Coulthard's helmet. It's been there for some laps, but of course he has been very close to the rear end of
Martin Brundle.
Martin Brundle, of course, yeah. But that doesn't really mean very much. There's always vapors from cars. Whenever you get close to somebody, you're going to get vapor marks and dirt on your helmet. And lumps of rubber.
Look at all that rubber buildup offline in the Grand Curve.
You don't want to get out wide there at all. And the Grand Curve is so vital to get it right, to get out onto this back straightaway. You can see it's like a continuous long right-hander. We're bleeding in with a left-hander, but it's so vital to get that long, long right correct for that back straightaway. In fact, they go down and pull up to 188 miles an hour. Probably in some cases a little bit more with a bit of a slipstream. Right down to first gear.
Look at the lead Damon Hill has opened up over Mika Hakkinen. Hill has yet to pit, as does Hakkinen. Johnny Herbert just ahead. Herbert has had a horrible weekend, complaining of handling problems from the Sauber. Things are not looking good for Johnny, who says he'd like to take a look at Indy cars if there's nothing for him in Formula One next year, and I think he'd be a good addition to the series. They see the running order. Coulthard has been in and out of the pits.
So slow in rev. He goes right down to the bottom. And screaming back up to 16,000.
So gentle on the steering wheel.
See the way the steering jars just as they happen to touch that curb. He really seems to be getting held up by that McLaren in front of him, but he can't do anything about overtaking it.
Now here's Damon Hill making his first stop. 16 men go to work, all fire 4 tires, come off and on simultaneously. A reminder, watch your brakes, set the rev limiter, don't go too fast on the pit out. Here's Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren pits.
He has to hold that button down all the way up until he gets to the end of the pit road and then release it.
An even quicker stop for Hakkinen than Coulthard got.
Superb stop.
My old colleague John Bizignano used to call them the perfect boys from McLaren, in part because they had the best pit stops in the business. They remain among the best, challenged perhaps by Benetton. Meanwhile, here's Jacques Villeneuve. He no doubt has a stop coming soon.
But he's now... Took them time to tell us, but we knew that he was in the lead. And he knew he was in the lead. Be interesting to see if he can make up some time with a couple of clear laps. Nobody in front of him. And his tyres obviously working remarkably well despite at the end of the session on these tyres. He can give it a blast, get some quick laps in to try to make up some time and then get a good pit stop and get out and see what the situation is then. But he needs to be in front of Hakkinen. You saw Hakkinen did a lightning pit stop, so Williams have got to equal that if they're going to do anything with him.
And if he is in fact on a one-stop strategy, he'll have to make as much time as possible right now to try to get in and out before his teammate comes around. The plot thickens here in France. We'll be back in just a moment. ESPN. You're looking at a broken-hearted Brazilian. Pedro Diniz was running as high as 6th in this race. He was 9th when the car broke and he parked it just past the pit out. Tough break for the Ligier driver.
And you can see here Villeneuve is still out there, and we mentioned just now that he'll be trying to get some really quick laps in while the others have done their pit stops. And sure enough, he got past his lap of the race up until this lap when Damon got past his lap on new tyres. But it shows that on used tyres after 26 laps that you can still turn in very quick laps, which is quite interesting to see.
Running order right now is Villeneuve, Hill, Alesi, Hakkinen, Berger, Denise. Here comes Villeneuve. And there you see Hill just 10 seconds behind. He will take the lead in the race. And now it becomes Hill's job to go as fast as he possibly can, because he will have another stop in his future, almost certainly. Ooh, not the fastest pit stop we've seen, and a little trouble getting up to speed. Damon Hill, meanwhile, has come by and taken the lead. And here comes Mika Hakkinen. I believe Jean Alesi has also gone by in the Benetton. That would bring Villeneuve out in third place, if I'm not mistaken. Meanwhile, there is Hill. Interesting report this weekend that the Italian investigator looking into the death of Ayrton Senna 2 years ago at Imola, Italy, has recommended that Frank Williams, his technical director Patrick Head, several other members of the Williams team, and officials from the Imola racetrack be indicted for manslaughter in the accident that took the life of Senna. The potential penalty could be as much as 7 years in prison, and if in fact they are indicted, the trial could begin as soon as November in Imola. Of course, all that remains to be seen. Max Mosley, the president of the international governing body, the FIA, has been quoted before as saying, if our teams cannot be secure in terms of potential liability, the FIA will no longer sanction events in Italy.
And that is a lot of events, not just the Grand Prix, so that would really ruin Italian motor racing, and it would kill them all. It just seems so ridiculous. Nobody wants to see a driver get killed. Nobody builds a car with danger, with the fact that something might break. Such things happen. That's motor racing. It's happened a lot over the years, but every time there's something in Italy, it's a major drama and costs a lot of money and a lot of fuss, a lot of bad feeling and a lot of bad memories. Really, basically, for a sport, a dangerous sport, that we all sign that motor racing is dangerous. End of story.
These are interesting days around the offices in Imola. If you're with us for our broadcast in Canada, you know that Imola has been fined $250,000 for the spectators getting on the racetrack after the San Marino Grand Prix, until they present a plan to prevent that from happening in the future. There will not be a Grand Prix of San Marino on next year's calendar, and that fine could go up to $1 million if it happens again. Meanwhile, Damon Hill is thinking only about beginning the second half of the season the way he began the first half, with a victory. He has 5 already this year. The record is 9. Hill looking very much like a potential record breaker this year. We're past, I should say we are approaching the halfway mark. There's Luca Badois. The 40 team can now close the garage doors. Both Andrea Montermini and Maverick are out of the race. Comfort to Luca Badois that he has now served his 3-race suspended ban for colliding with Jacques Villeneuve at Monaco. Meanwhile, Ukio Katayama is on the track for Tyrrell. He is under a 1-race probation for colliding with Ricardo Rosset in Canada. As you watch Olivier Panis, the sole remaining French Blue Ligier in the race. Notice the exhaust flashing inside that carefully constructed air diffuser. Many of the teams run their exhaust outside that diffuser, all a part of the black art of managing the airflow and maintaining the downforce at the rear of the car. 3 liters of super hot air pounding out of those engines almost 300 times per second. That's a lot of air to manage.
They're both having such a nice too. They're both locking up brakes. If one of them did lock them up at the brake at one of these corners, the other one would get by. But they're both so busy out braking one another, which is inevitable. That's racing. but they're so busy doing it that they're actually both having some wild times and no doubt some rather slow lap times.
This is for 7th place. Pedro Diniz, by the way, suffered a hydraulic failure, or excuse me, a pneumatic failure in his valve train. Most of the frontline engines in Formula One, of course, use pneumatically actuated valve trains because the traditional coil spring and tappet valve system simply doesn't work at the kind of revs these engines produce, up around 17,000. When you lose that air pressure, the system doesn't work, you are finished. Into the Grand Curve. Notice a grandstand coming up on the left right there. That's the new Ayrton Senna grandstand. And most of the people sitting in it are poor children from this region of France. The tickets were sold to corporations who donated the tickets to various organizations to bring the kids to the racetrack, and a portion of the proceeds of those ticket sales will go to the Senna Foundation, dedicated to improving the lot of disadvantaged children around the world, not only in his native Brazil.
Brundle is having a mighty time here keeping Panis out of the way, but he's not going to keep it for long. One or other's got to do something. I think Panis just got a quicker lap than Brundle too, just back there. He's going to have to get by him in a minute. Martin, of course, when you're driving like this, you're actually overheating the tires much more. You're driving it very, very hard indeed. And that, of course, stresses the tires out, and of course you get the car sliding on much more than you'd want.
Here's that Ukio Katayama's races run for the Tyrrell Yamaha team, one of several teams that will be affected by the loss of Elf at the end of the year. Back live in France, watching the battle for second, Jean Alesi in the Benetton leads Jacques Villeneuve in the Williams, both cars powered by Renault V10s. There you see the lap comparisons, their best lap and their last lap. Villeneuve going quicker at the moment.
Yes, those fresh tires. I mean, even with you have two sets of tires. You put a brand new set on, go out and do a time. You then go put another brand new set on and you go quicker. Now, it's unbelievable that can happen, but that's the case. And you saw Villeneuve say this before. He said, I can't believe it. The car was so good on my second set of tires, but the new tires go out on a circuit with a bit more rubber, and it just suits them. But they certainly are very, very close. And there's some actually very good dices going on, because in fact, just behind these two, we've got Hakkinen having a very good go too with Berger.
We are at the halfway point of the race, holding the line, feathering the throttle, and nailing it once he gets onto the portion of the track where he can keep the car under control. 3.3 Gs on the outside of that Grand Curve. Going down the inside for second place.
He's got him because he's on the inside. He's really got him. He gets on it. Yes, he's fine because he's shot right across in front of him. Beautiful piece of overtaking. Nothing stupid from Alesi. Lovely bit of overtaking. But you see, by having hairpins, you can overtake. But so many circuits don't have them, and there's no way you can overtake on fast, sweeping curves.
Panis in the pits. This is Panis' second stop, and we're only at the halfway mark. This is a bit unusual. He may have detected something wrong with the tires. I wouldn't imagine, even on a three-stop strategy, that he'd be in now. He'll give up some track position. The Legers just one of 5 teams that will be affected by the loss of Elf at the end of the year. Williams, Benetton, Sauber, Ligier, Forti. I believe Tyrrell's in that group as well.
This is the pass that Villeneuve just made on Alesi. A lovely move, plenty of room, went down the inside, right down the inside, hit the brakes extremely hard, 49 degrees centigrade, and then out he comes, Alesi right up behind him, but he's made the pass, super pass.
Keep in mind, those two had a few contretemps earlier in the year. And at one point, Villeneuve said, Alesi had better watch out or it's going to be payback time.
Well, it was then, but without any contact. But seeing Panis stop, you recollect just before that he was having a mighty dice with Martin Brundle, and they were all locking up brakes one inside the other, trying to slow each other down, etc., etc. And I think what might have well happened is he might have flattened the tire in that braking episode, and he had to come in because the vibration was too heavy for him to hold it. Now we'll see what Jack can do with Hill, who's obviously some ways in front. Beautiful bit of smooth driving from Jack. He's driving very, very well at the moment. He's probably getting a bit tighter on that one, but he's happy with it. Doing some very, very good times, but obviously still quite a long way from Hill, and he's pulling away from Alesi. But don't forget, there is another pit stop in hand yet, and all sorts of things can happen. Motor racing was a long old battle. You never win it until you see that checkered flag.
He's drawing away from Alesi.
That is really why Alesi probably let him by so simply. He knew that there's no point in balking the guy forever. And he obviously heeded Alesi's words, Villeneuve's words. See, Villeneuve's got the fastest lap of 1:18.9, which is fabulous. Super time.
We had a quick look at Mika Salo in the Tyrrell running way back in the field. Tyrrell's problems continue. Katayama is out of the race. There's the gap from Hill in first to Villeneuve in second. We'll take a break and be back with more live from round 9 of the World Driving Championship. Hill, Villeneuve, and Alesi out front. On the Senior Tour lately. So tune them in later today on ESPN. Meanwhile, live in France, Rubens Barrichello and Olivier Panis having a dice over 8th place. There you see Panis, obviously the quicker car. He has fresh tires after 2 stops. The second one coming at roughly the halfway mark. Johnny Herbert.
He's got them all locked up there. He's having a mighty time. An awful time. He's been complaining. Look at him. He's losing it. He's losing it. No, he hasn't. He's kept it going. But he's had an awful time all weekend complaining about brake balance and also handling.
Now here is Jacques Villeneuve going underneath Pedro Lamy and giving him the old...
What the heck are you doing, sunshine, is what he's saying. How about letting him by?
That was delicately put.
Yes.
Villeneuve in second place. His teammate Damon Hill has checked out, basically. He's about a dozen seconds up the road, looking for his 6th victory of the year. Villeneuve already has one. Warmers coming off the tires, heated to about 175 degrees or so. That's the Sauber pit. They'll be coming in to change Johnny Herbert's after he flat spotted that left front.
You see that red light? Those red lights shows he gets down to low revs. We had the same on our Le Mans McLarens a couple of weeks ago. Just light telling us when we got too low and when we got too high in revs. The red light means he's about to shift gear. We don't have any rev counter as such. We just have light telling us that you're on low revs. Then we should go down a gear, which of course we don't really need to know in a racing car terms, but certainly when you get too high.
Gerhard Berger chasing David Coulthard. How is that BMW V12 in the McLaren?
Absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Paul Rusher has done an outstanding job with it. It was he that said to me, I think it's time we deal to another Formula One engine. And then you hear rumors in the pits of BMW coming back to Formula One in the future, so who knows? Rusher, who's masterminded nearly all their racing engines for the last 38 years, done a wonderful job for BMW, but I'll say the engine that we had at Le Mans and last year, I don't know of any engines in the McLaren actually quitting or blowing up during the 24 hours this year or last year. It is remarkable how well it goes. In fact, the best part about our car was the engine and the drinks bottle.
And the drinks bottle? That doesn't say much for your race, I guess.
No, thanks.
Gerhard Berger closing up to battle with David Coulthard for 4th place. Excuse me, Mika Hakkinen for 4th place. David Coulthard trails that battle, but he's nowhere in sight.
Look at those flags, Damon Hill.
Boy, look at them now.
We
Imagine what you'll see in 2 weeks' time at Silverstone.
Just can't imagine what it's going to be. Obviously, we heard there was talk of Mansell driving in the touring car race for Opel, but he's got in terms of $500,000 or £500,000 for the race, but in fact they've all been squashed because they probably wouldn't give him $550,000, so he wouldn't do it. Plus he was in for a hiding for nothing because he got thrashed last time he did touring cars, and you can't be out for 2 seasons.
Low stop for the Benetton boys. John Alesi comes back out. That will likely be his last stop of the race with 30 laps remaining. He pitted from 3rd place.
Mechanic giving him a little bit of extra instruction about make sure you get the right first gear, boy, but he's in there, pulls in front of the other car, and of course it was inevitable that I don't know if it's Frenzen or whether it was
Johnny Herbert, I believe.
Johnny was obviously going to back off. Johnny knew he was way back, and Alesi knew that Johnny was only going to hold him up if he went through. Frank Williams. Here we go down inside here. Oh, he's going. He just took down inside. Beautiful bit of overtaking down inside. Was that?
That's Gerhard Berger, I believe,
yeah, taking Hakkinen.
Taking Hakkinen for 4th place.
Yeah.
We'll wait for the world feed to update us on the running order as you watch Jacques Villeneuve.
He's really on it there. He's drifted it into that corner beautifully. Had it sliding as he turned in. Doing a wonderful job. It'd be interesting to see just how close he's getting to Damon. He's really on a roll right now. He started off very, very carefully, but then, of course, he had a massive crash. The gap is exactly the same, 12 seconds, but he's still doing a tremendous job. Pity he couldn't have done this from the beginning of the race, so he might have seen some fireworks.
While we have a moment, let's check our Haviland race recap. The race leader is Damon Hill, who has led since lap 31, gave up that lead only during his pit stop. 2 lead changes between the 2 drivers, both Williams-Renault pilots. Lots of cars out of the race, none more surprising than Ferrari. Michael Schumacher, the pole sitter, having taken a record-extending 117th pole for the brand of the Prancing Horse, blew the engine on the formation lap. With no warning, he reported. Eddie Irvine went out with gearbox problems. And there you see the rest of the cars who have parked to this point in the race. We're not used to heavy attrition at this track. We have a long way yet to go. The shadows have gone away, but the clouds are high and they don't look particularly rainy. It's a warm afternoon in the Loire Valley, the famed wine-growing region of southeastern France. The Manicourt circuit near the town of Nevers has been a controversial home for the French Grand Prix since it took the race from the Paul Ricard circuit in southern France, down on the Côte d'Azur. Many rumors were that Ricard would get this race back, but Bernie Ecclestone cut a new deal with Manicourt, so the series will be coming back here for years to come.
It is a, oh, this is, oh no, whoa, look at him lock those brakes up. And we don't know if that's Brundle, who it is, but there's certainly a lot of brake locking up, which we've seen considerable amount of going on during this race. It's very difficult. If you don't get that balance right, of course there is a balance knob in the cockpit of the car, which the driver can adjust. So he really can do it himself if he wants to. The problem is it happens at different parts of the circuit. You get the balance right for a slow corner, but of course it's also to do with the ride height and actually the movement of the chassis. And if you get too much movement to the front with the weight and the center of pressure going to the front of the car, of course the back lifts up and you get the back locking up. Then you come into a slow corner and it's the fronts that'll lock up because you're not getting such a transfer of weight because you're going slower. So a lot of adjustment has to be made.
Love those shots of the backs of the cars rocketing away from you, especially in a corner. TV talk, that's called a tails away shot.
Panis really wants to get on it there, but he's held up. You can see the way Barrichello was backing off. You see the whips, little licks of whispers of flame coming out of his exhaust as he backed off. Panis was all over the back of him. Oh, he's gone by, and how? That is so good to see some overtaking. But you've got a hairpin and it can be done. So everybody can overtake with those hairpin bends. But my goodness, he got by and pulled out 20 yards straight away.
Boy, that was quick.
Yeah. Well, he knows, of course, that Barrichello's got a braking problem. So therefore he knows that if he's really positive about it, there's no way that Barrichello dare try and outbrake Panis, and he's gone.
Thought he might have overcooked that corner just a little bit. Here it is from overhead.
What a move. He's still on full throttle. Then on the brakes, down inside, plenty of room. There's no way that Barrichello's going to give him a hard time. And of course, it allows Panis to get on that new bit of surface, which I'm pretty sure has better grip than the old surface. Here we go, another beautiful front shot as he has to go down the inside. Remember, it looks like that's Villeneuve behind, is it?
That's Hill coming up behind the race leader.
Right. Look at that, slicks it in there, beautiful. No harassment at all, but you notice even then Barrichello's right front tire was smoking. So he's having a major problem with his braking.
Clear track for Panis now. And he has the race leader behind him running in 8th place and in danger of being lapped. We'll be back with more live coverage of the Grand Prix of France after this. Back live in France, race leader Damon Hill has put a lap on the Ligier of Olivier Panis, and here is the pass.
Yeah, he's a little behind, but boy, he went through and Panis wasn't going to argue with him, but he didn't make it easy. He kept right tight there, which is a bit stupid when he knows that Damon's made a whole lap on him, making it awkward for him. Here's another shot. Now we'll get a better idea of where the cars were. Damon is a bit brave here, but of course it is a hairpin, and he is on that new surface. Panis could have gone out wider. See how he pulls back in to make Damon's drive harder? Look at that. That's very silly sort of a driving maneuver, and as Damon, I'd be a little bit fed up with that. You'd give him the old wave of the hand, I fear.
Well, you're right. Damon was a bit brave there. That was about as late as he could wait for that dive down the inside.
But of course, he was on the inside of a very tight corner. You'd never have got away with that on a faster corner.
Hopping up through the gearbox. There's the running order. Gerhard Berger has made his second stop. so he should be clean to the finish behind the Lazy. Villeneuve, meanwhile, has reset fast lap of the race. There it is, 1:18.610. Recall that fast lap last year was Michael Schumacher in the Benetton Renault at 1:20.218. So we've already come down about a second and a half from that.
Yes, Jack's really got the bit between his teeth, doing a superb job of catching up Damon. Little by little, because he's cracking in these fastest laps. But of course they both have to stop again. And of course it'll depend on his teamwork. And he puts a heck of a lot of... Here they go.
Jacques Villeneuve into the Williams pit.
See that white button on the top right? That button there is the rev limiter button. When he goes down the pit road, it also serves as the water drink bottle when he's driving on the circuit. So he presses the button when he's driving, gets some water out of it, or whatever fluid he has in the bottle. That's an interesting shot. And we had no idea how quick his pit stop was, but we had a good shot of a wall.
8.4 seconds it said there, which means it was about 3 seconds quicker than the man ahead of him, Martin Brundle. Ahead of him in the pit lane, that is, not on the racetrack. Now back out, third gear. See if I can do it right this time. Fourth. Fifth.
No, you're wrong.
Wrong again.
Wrong again. He's in a higher gear than you imagine.
Well, I'll turn in my license. Jack running. Talk about the speeds we have seen as you watch David Coulthard into the McLaren pits. Michael Schumacher's pole at 1:15.9 is more than a second under. Oh, look at that. 7.6 seconds for Coulthard.
They've done a 7.8, a 7.7, and 7.6 pit stop so far on the two cars. Superb.
Well, they'll get it right by the end of the day at that rate. A full second off Nigel Mansell's lap record set back in 1992 in the all-singing, all-dancing 3.5-liter computerized Williams Renault that he took to the championship. So here with a half-liter less displacement and all of the self-adjusting suspensions and braking systems and engine management, all that stuff off the car, Schumacher's Ferrari was more than a second quicker.
And of course there's a tremendous amount of tire development, and we don't give enough praise to Goodyear for all the work they do in supplying all these tires. I know we've got Bridgestone, possibly Pirelli, Michelin coming in the future, but Goodyear do a tremendous amount of development.
Funny you should mention. Cue the villains as far as Goodyear is concerned. This, of course, is the TWR Arrows team. Ricardo Rosset, his teammate Jos Verstappen, is out. Verstappen has been testing the Bridgestone Firestone company's new Formula One tires at Silverstone. In fact, that team will stay on here at the racetrack to test those tires here at Manicourt in the week to come. Goodyear will not allow them to take their tires home at the end of the race, save for one set of wets that they push the cars around on. And Goodyear, I believe, has also announced that when the Bridgestone contract is announced for TWR, they will get no tires for testing or anything else.
That should make Tom's day. But of course, the other interesting little gem is that or chat around here, has been the engineers in, we call it mufti, in just regular clothes, jeans and t-shirts, have been out walking on the track, picking up pieces of rubber from the Goodyear tires for Bridgestone and taking it back to analyze for their development for the future. Such is the war that's going to go next year. Goodyear's, in fact, say they're looking forward to it because they haven't really developed these tires to the full, the way they could. Look at that rubber line there. So it's not difficult to make any pickings, and if they're testing all week, they're going to find all sorts of rubber here after the race.
All you have to do is stand in the pits. You can scrape it off your forehead. Pit stop comparison, Hakkinen on the left, Frentzen on the right. 6.2 seconds for the Sauber team. Well, I hope they got all the nuts and bolts back on that thing. Very quick pit stop.
Unfortunately, they're a little bit too far back for it to be of any great benefit to them. They're not having a good time at the moment.
This is Damon Hill. You must be so precise. And this, while 3.3 Gs are trying to tear your head off, you have to thread the needle between all the garbage on the racetrack and do it while rocketing up to 185 miles an hour and going through 4 gears.
It's 3.3 G, Bob, for those that haven't heard it before, but that means with your helmet on your head, it weighs about 66, 69 pounds, your head and helmet. And with all those G-forces, it's not just a smooth G, it's quite a kick. And that really does give your neck a lot of aggravation. So these drivers with race fitness get strong necks.
Fanny in the blue car on the right, and the McLarens on the left. Fanny making the pass, trying desperately to stay in the points. The only remaining Ligier in this race. Oops, that was when you don't do it right.
That's right. He really didn't do it right. Oh, that was a very, very silly move there.
That's Coulthard.
Oh, yes, Coulthard having a very, very bad time. Fanny's tried to do what Damon had done to him, but of course Coulthard locked it in on him. The Damon in the pits for his stop. Let's just see how quick that is.
And a concrete wall right there at the turn-in for the pits. This will be Hill's last stop.
He hasn't even taken his tear-off strip off yet. Quick stop, 7.2. That's about second quickest we've seen. Super stop. See him holding the rev limiter down with his right finger there. His right thumb, should I say. You release it.
Those were scrub tires going on as well, it appeared.
He's actually got scrub tires, but he could well have just gone out and done a couple of laps during practice just to try them out and bed them in. It doesn't hurt, I don't think, to go out and scuff the tires off a bit, so they're not totally new when you go out, but of course they are up to temperature.
Damon Hill retains the lead. This man, Jacques Villeneuve, continues in second place. It's a 1-2 for Williams at this point. Here's Gerhard Berger. We'll be right back. Week. Olivier Panis back in the pits. This is his third stop in the Ligier. And there's still quite a ways to go in this French Grand Prix.
He also might, of course, come in to check the fact that we had a hit just now with Coulthard. So it probably might be something just to check the car. Might have got something a bit out of balance. He's hitting a lot of things today, and flat tiring and flat spotting tires.
He's got traffic coming up behind him, too, as he works those tires up to temperature. Probably third gear here. Fourth.
You'll never know, will you? You'll just never know, Bob.
French television didn't want me to be wrong again.
Berger working hard on Alesi. I think there's going to be a little bit of overtaking done here. Presumably Alesi has a minor problem with the car. We actually have no idea as to their relevant or relative lap times, but they're still going pretty well. What are they in third and fourth place? Maybe fourth and fifth, actually. Hakkinen, I think, is in third place, right at the second. It's difficult to know after these pit stops. Confuse things a bit.
What a difference a year makes for the Benetton team. Riding the Constructors' Championship and a Driving Championship with Michael Schumacher. Suddenly they have to get used to two brand new drivers. And Ross Braun, their technical director, admits that has been their biggest single problem, is understanding what the drivers need in the car. Of course, it was a car that was designed around Michael Schumacher, who has a very distinctive driving style, very stiff at the front end, very little suspension play, very different sort of turn-in, use of the brake and the throttle and so on. But now it appears that Benetton may be gelling just a bit, and they could be a force in the second half.
And, of course, there's the rumor of Ross Braun possibly going to Arrows to work with his old boss, Tom Walkinshaw, who they had many years together.
There is a rumor that one or perhaps both of these drivers may be replaced next year. Flavio Briatore, whose own tenure with the team is being questioned this weekend, as you see the attrition thus far in the race. Rumor has it that they're going to be talking with Mika Hakkinen, that they're inquiring about Giancarlo Fisichella with the Minardi team.
Seeing we're riding here with Berger, he's been complaining all weekend about the mapping of his car. Now that is something that we don't know too much about, so we're not told about it, but basically they can alter the whole power curve of the engine with their computers, and Berger's been complaining about getting it right. Now they have a button on the steering wheel itself that they can press or flick, that when they get rain they can flick it so that the actual drivability of the car becomes much softer. It becomes easier to drive. It's not so harsh. The acceleration is smoother. You see Villeneuve is catching Hill tenth of a second at a time, but nevertheless he's catching. However, back to the mapping, and obviously as far as getting the race setup is concerned, they're not happy with the mappings. That means maybe in the middle of the big fast curve, the engine doesn't have quite the power, the torque that they want at that point, and they haven't got it right yet. And of course they work at it when they debrief, put it back together for the next session, but of course they don't get that much time with the car at any one circuit to do this debriefing and get the mapping right. That basically is what Berger's been complaining about.
2 Williams up front, 2 Benettons running 3rd and 4th, 2 McLarens running 5th and 6th with 15 laps to go. The guy you want to beat first is your teammate, and nobody wants to do that more than Gerhard Berger. This one could get interesting. Championship points at stake. We'll be back with more from France in a moment. Back in France, here is the last trauma of the day for Heinz-Harald Frentzen in that chicane where we've seen so many offs this weekend. Simply overcooked it, locked up the fronts.
The backs aren't working at all. Do you see that? The back brakes are not working. Now that's his problem. They just cannot slow it down. Tries to keep it going. Look at the build-up of shingle on those front tires. That is it. Goes in underneath. Stop.
Same problem Johnny Herbert had yesterday. The back brakes simply stopped working.
How frustrating. There just was not any braking on the rear at all. And he only got a little bit out of shape coming out of the left-hander, enough that it threw the balance, hits the brakes, locks the fronts up, and they only work, not the rears. And I tell you, you're just a passenger when the rear brakes don't work. You may as well not have any brakes at all.
Meanwhile, the Benetton boys, Alesi and Berger, continue to run nose to tail in 3rd and 4th. See that Ajip board in the background. Ajip, of course, out of Formula One once Shell took over their Ferrari affiliation. We watch Alesi leading Berger once again. Berger appears to be the quicker of these 2 cars, but he just cannot get around his teammate. At any rate, remember the name Ajip for those 6 teams that are losing ELF for fuel and lubricants next year. There's Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
I think it's remarkable. They come in looking so cool. I mean, I get out of a car after 3 laps, I look an absolute wreck, and there is Frentzen. He's just done 3/4 of the Grand Prix. Great pressure, and he gets out very cool. I guess it's a cooler day, although somebody said it was in the early 70s as the day had progressed. You can see the blue sky there, so it must be pretty warm outside right now.
The rejuvenative powers of youth.
Yeah, I keep forgetting how old I am. Interesting note here, talking about brakes, is that, of course, they have carbon fiber brakes and discs, and they both wear. Discs, they have them between 24 and 28 millimeters in thickness when they start. And during the race, they'll lose 30% of that. In other words, 8 to 9 millimeters of the discs will wear away during the race. And the pads will be 21 millimeters thick when they start, and they will wear 3 millimeters. So both components actually decline, actually get smaller as the race progresses. They do work so well, though. These carbon brakes are absolutely tremendous the way they work. They're so efficient. But of course, because the braking is done so very late, if anything goes wrong, there is no room for error at all.
I remember a few years ago in Canada, Nigel Mansell showed me one of the discs off of his Williams. The thing at the end of the race was transparent. It had worn down to absolutely nothing. It was extraordinary. Of course, they weigh virtually nothing and cost a fortune.
Yeah, we had them on, I remember on the Porsches for a few races. They used to cost $10,000 a weekend just for the brakes. That was for a Porsche, which, of course, these are much more high-tech, I suppose. Well, that was the early days of development. The only problem was, sitting in the Porsche, you'd get all the brake dust coming in, because it was a closed car, to get all this terrible stuff, and you get out absolutely black from head to foot. It get in your eyes. It was very irritating. But Hill is gradually pulling away from Villeneuve now. So he's obviously got the pedal to the metal. We saw him get some slightly quicker laps.
Well, as Hill approaches slower traffic once again, and pretty soon he's going to be lapping cars in the points. Take a time out and return for more from France. Stay with us. You will not believe the bikes, the inline skaters, the skateboarders, the barefoot jumping. X Games have been great fun. Here are the cars out of the race. We get into the late laps of this Grand Prix of France to begin the second half of the Formula One World Driving Championship for 1996. Bob Barsha, Derek Bell with you. The Formula One season is broken into half sections, and those halves can be important because they are what determine your financial payout. Formula One teams don't like to talk about money. But the best guess about the total value of the season to the teams is somewhere in the region of $35 million. And the payout from race to race, the transportation costs and so forth, are paid out based in part on your performance over the last 2 half seasons. A sticking throttle, and of course a lack of stopping from those rear brakes, threw Heinz-Harald Frentzen into the gravel trap just before the commercial break. And so he is finished. And no doubt, a very frustrated young German. His contract is up this year, and he will be a player in the off-season sweepstakes.
Yes, he has a cutout button on the steering column, but I guess in those split seconds he had between realization that he wasn't going to stop in the sandbank, the sandbed, he didn't have time to press the cutout button. But of course the car doesn't stop nearly so well when the engine's switched off anyway, but at least he would have had drive from the rear wheels. Villeneuve not doing much about Damon. He's pulling up a few tenths here and there. But of course now he looks like he has Panis to overtake, and we saw Panis isn't always that easy to overtake, or doesn't give you much room.
I don't know if it's just our transmission here or whether you're seeing this at home, but there is some fault in the picture which makes it look right there as though Jacques Villeneuve's onboard camera is about to fall off the car. But that is a transmission fault. That is not happening to the race car.
Not a bad vibration he's got.
That would be a bad one.
That was worse.
Well, once again, this is French television.
Well, they're going to follow this because they've got a Frenchman in front here, and they've got a French-Canadian behind him.
Let's get the technicians to stop watching the European Championship football match from London.
Oh, that's probably what it is, yeah. Mind you, the French would be very interested in that. They were blown out some while ago.
Germany and the Czech Republic going at it. And that, of course, is the talk of all Europe this weekend, in addition to the Grand Prix of France. Hazing the hides that little bit, Olivier Panis.
Isn't it wonderful the way those Williams can get that car, Patrick Head and his boys can get that car so perfectly balanced. You very rarely see it locking up brakes. You saw Panis there scratching away, smoke coming off the tires. Get that, Williams sits behind him. Jack can have a look at him. He's going to find his spot, no doubt coming to a hairpin in a moment or two. No heroics with locking up brakes. At least I hope so. Famous last words.
Notice the car ahead. Panis does not have that tall camera on top of his roll hoop. The cars that are not carrying the onboard cameras are required to carry about 5 pounds of ballast, which of course they put very low in the car for balance purposes. The recent Canadian Grand Prix, André Montermini with a 40 car spun off because that lead ballast got loose under his seat and hit him in the accelerator foot, pinning the throttle and throwing the car off the racetrack. Occupational hazard. And no doubt an interesting line in the post-race report. Out of race, ballast hits him in the accelerator. We'll step away for a moment. Back with more live from France. We are back live in France. The Benetton boys, John O'Lacey and Gerhard Berger battling. Our next stop, the Grand Prix of Great Britain from mighty Silverstone in England. Qualifying coverage coming your way Saturday, July 13th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. Pacific here on ESPN2. And then live coverage Sunday, July 14th, 8:45 a.m. Be sure to be with us for that. There is nothing like the former World War II airfield, now turned into one of the great racing circuits. 800 acres, jam-packed with 90,000 or so fans, down from 120,000 after problems with spectators getting on the racetrack a few years ago. There's nothing quite like Silverstone. 2 weeks from today.
Well, the drivers aren't that keen on it, you know. They don't like it as much, but of course they love those fast sweeping corners that Silverstone used to be. And it's become much more clinical over the seasons, and the drivers don't like it so much. And I must admit, as I said, I raced there just a few weeks ago, and it's nothing like the circuit it used to be. However, it is a modern Formula One circuit with all these magnificent facilities that very few other circuits in the world have got. And they keep spending millions of pounds a year. In fact, the British Racing Drivers Club, the oldest club in the world, Racing Drivers Club, established in 1928, owns Silverstone, and there are like 500 of us that are owners of it. We don't have any shares in it. There's no profit. There's no share handouts at the end of the year. All the money goes back to the track, which is very, very rare. And so consequently, Silverstone spends a fortune every year onto redeveloping or developing areas of the circuit.
Oldest racing club, not oldest racing drivers. I just want to be clear on that.
You're about right on us, 1928.
If the cars hold their position to the finish, it will be the fourth 1-2 for the Williams-Renault team this year, and as a result, their lead in the Constructors' World Championship would fatten up to 101 points, while Benetton and Ferrari would be tied for second with just 35. That is how strong Williams-Renault have been this year. Nobody leaving the grandstands. We hope you're not either. Just a couple of laps remaining in the Grand Prix of France, and we'll be back with them for you in just a moment. Back in France, Damon Hill, the sun is shining. Just your average day in the office. Driving around the circuit Nevers-Manicourt, hoping to post his first victory at this racetrack after 3 poles and 3 disappointments.
Yeah, what a masterful piece of driving. And he's driven away from everybody at the start. He's had Villeneuve pushing him all the way. He's pushed him down to 11.6 seconds now, but it's always been around 12. Obviously, there's nothing to worry about as far as him catching, as long as Hill's car runs faultlessly for the next 2 laps. But he's been under pressure from Jacques the whole way. Jacques driven a superb race. It's a pity he couldn't have got it together earlier, but of course he was held up in traffic. And as we've seen, it is very difficult to get by. And of course, we've got the Benetton's 3rd and 4th at this time, which is all they could have expected.
Jacques Villeneuve right there had better stay a racing driver. Beginning tomorrow in England, he could not get a heavy vehicle license if he needed one. He could not drive the team truck because beginning tomorrow, drivers in England must take their vision test without glasses or corrective lenses. So he better stay in the race car because he can't drive the team truck.
You're a mine of information. Just what Jacques wanted was to be truck driver. I'm sure it's the last thing on his mind. Where do you pick this rubbish up from, Bob?
With that vote of confidence, maybe I'll stop. Everywhere. That's where I find it. John Alesi remains marginally ahead of his teammate Gerhard Berger. I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't seen more fireworks from that pair. Berger desperately needs a good finish. Alesi has had a handful of podiums already this year.
They might well have been told by the old governor back there that, boys, you better finish where you are because I don't want any heroics. So just play it as it is. And there are team rules, team tactics occasionally, and I'm sure it's happened in this place. 3rd and 4th is better than 3rd and nothing.
Or nothing and nothing if they collided. Alesi is the leader among the teammates in points. We saw the Williams crew leaving the garage to head over to the pit wall to welcome their boys home with their 4th 1-2 finish of the year as things presently stand. Damon Hill, potentially his 6th victory in 9 races this year.
He's driven an immaculate race, one has to say. Been clocking in quickest laps most of the way and flicking those over with Jacques, who's been whipping some quick laps in as well. Of course, Damon, because all he has to do is keep his cool, keep ahead, don't let anybody get too close. It's exactly what he's done. He's popped in the quick ones when he's had to keep Jacques behind him.
You ride with Damon Hill with just a couple of quarters remaining before the checkered flag. His 19th victory, putting him just 1 behind Michael Schumacher as they continue their climb up the all-time list. Congratulations to Damon Hill.
Excellent piece of driving. Superb. Whoa, Jack is still trying.
Speaking of which,
12 seconds up like that, but he was trying.
Is that Sean Alesi? In which case,
Tyrrell.
That's a Tyrrell. I'm sorry. It's Mika Salo. I was looking at helmets, and I was looking for Gerhard Berger. I'm getting way ahead of myself, obviously. Here they come. Alesi and Berger. Hill will remain the points leader. Villeneuve will remain second. Michael Schumacher will begin to come under fire from Jean Alesi. Schumacher, of course, scored no points whatsoever today. And Gerhard Berger will break a tie with Rubens Barrichello. He will move up slightly in the championship standings as well. Across the line they come. Congratulations to Benetton. Congratulations between the teammates. We've got lots of time to spend with you. Stand by for more Live from France. Welcome back live to France. There you see the Drivers' Championship standings after 9 of 16 races. Damon Hill expands his lead over his teammate Jacques Villeneuve. 3rd place, Michael Schumacher, pressed hard by Alesi. There is Jos Verstappen coming home on the roll hoop of teammate Ricardo Rosset's car. A finish for the Brazilian He hasn't had many this year, so that will be a confidence boost for him.
I thought that was David Coulthard.
Excuse me, is that Coulthard?
Yeah, it looks like Coulthard's helmet
sorry.
with a big white star on the top of it, or the white cross. Red Marlborough overalls.
I'll just stop doing this. You continue.
No, I'm sorry, but I
Absolutely.
I thought it's quite a good shot of Coulthard myself.
It actually is.
Apart from wearing his kilt, I wouldn't have, thought any different.
Is my face red? There you see the Sauber. Heinz Harald Frentzen pulled away. Frank Williams, another 1-2 finish for his team. Here are the results. Hill over Villeneuve, Jean Alesi, Gerhard Berger, 2 Williams, 2 Benettons, then Mika Hakkinen and David Coulthard, bringing the McLarens home 5th and 6th. Of course, the story of the day is Michael Schumacher, our pole sitter, whose Ferrari expired on the formation lap. He did not complete one single circuit. 13 cars in all classified as finishers. Here is Damon Hill ascending the podium, the dominant leader of the World Driving Championship. Here are the standings. Hill over Villeneuve. Schumacher now just 1 point ahead of Jean Alesi for 3rd. David Coulthard moves up. Mika Hakkinen and Olivier Panis follow. In the Constructors' Championship, Williams-Renault simply out of sight over Ferrari and Benetton, tied for 2nd, McLaren in 3rd, and the rest as you see them. So after losing the Constructors' Championship that they had held for several seasons last year to Benetton, it appears that Williams-Renault is about to grasp it once again, and it could be a title double, Williams and Damon Hill. 19th career victory for Hill. Michael Schumacher has 20. They're far and away the leaders among active drivers. Gerhard Berger is 3rd in the single digits. They will be creeping up past some of the great names of the sport. They've already passed Sterling Moss. Our next race will be the Grand Prix of Great Britain from Silverstone, qualifying tape delayed Saturday night, July 13th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and then the race live Sunday, July 14th. Note the time, 8:45 a.m. Eastern, 5:45 a.m. Pacific Time. Now the moment that the crowd waving the Damon Hill Union Jacks have been waiting for as their man climbs the podium along with Jacques Villeneuve and Jean Alesi. Frank Williams' smile, and we don't often see a lot of those from the man who has brought the Williams team from near bankruptcy decades ago to become the ultimate powerhouse in Formula One.
What a story it would be if one day they actually wrote a story about Frank Williams' life, not the one his wife just wrote, but the one actually of his racing story, because I mean he was a bankrupt, he owed us all money for years. What a wonderful story it was. He raced with us in Formula 3. Amazing man, really.
Running his business out of a phone booth, dodging predators.
Yeah, you can try and phone out and say, where is Frank? They say, where are you phoning from, Frank? He's in the phone booth. I can't phone from the office, the phone's being cut off.
God Save the Queen plays in honor of winner Damon Hill.
Well, England didn't get to the European Cup final, so Damon's done his bit for Britain today.
Jean-Marie Balest, president of the French Federation, passing out the trophies. Former president of what was then known as the FISA, sporting arm of the International Automotive Governing Body. Now the two are one, headed by Max Mosley after a bitter political struggle with that man. So another barrier falls to Damon Hill, who wins at a racetrack where he had never won before. Manicourt is the winner of the Grand Prix of France.
I reckon that race is secured in the World Championship myself.
Might well have. But of course, if you thought he was under pressure here, it's nothing like what he's going to experience in 2 weeks at Silverstone with 90,000 manic fans out there pounding on the bleachers.
Yes, it's incredible for him. I've never been in that situation, as many people have, but I remember Mansell saying how phenomenal it was to be out there with the fans rooting for you.
You can be sure they will drown out the sound of the engine. Oh yeah, this is Alesi's moment. He would like to have won this race, but it was not to be against the might of Williams. Now Damon Hill asks the second and third place finishers to join him at the top of the podium for pictures that will be seen well over 150 countries around the world where Formula One is viewed as the pinnacle of world motorsport.